All right, it's 6:02. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We'll start off with the previous minutes. If there's no questions or concerns, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes. Devin made the motion. Rachel? Sarah?
Aye.
Aye. I'm an aye. Okay, on policy, we got one first read on student athletics, clubs, and activities. Any questions or issues with that? I'll entertain a motion to set that.
I'll make the motion.
Sarah made the motion. Rachel?
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
Devin?
Aye.
I'm an aye. There's no second reads, and then we have one to be removed, the attendance procedure. Any issues with that? If not, entertain a motion to remove that. Deb made the motion. Rachel?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Okay, do we have to reprioritize anything?
I'd like to move one of the presentations I have under my agenda about our alternative programs to after the spot. I'll just move to the top of my section.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right. Okay, recognition of visitors. Do we have any? No visitors?
No visitors on mine.
All right. I'll move us right into the spotlight. Christian.
So I asked Kristen Baker, who's a middle school math teacher, to come and present. She was our FNESU middle high school teacher of the year, outstanding teacher. But I think what she's going to present tonight is a great example of how the staff at Richford Junior Senior High School has taken the idea behind project-based learning, and actually it was just like a week unit that we were doing, and people have really made it part of their everyday practice, which really has increased engagement for kids, and I think this is it's one of the best examples I've seen. So I asked Kristen to come and present.
So Market Day was essentially taking some standards and putting it into a business plan for like a pretty real life situation for students. Do you mind popping to this? So we hit some 6th grade standards, some 7th grade standards, and the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is an example of the proficiency scale. So a 3 would be demonstrating proficiency. This example was just specific to multiplying with multi-digit decimals. We had a learning scale for each part of the 6th and 7th grade standards. So if Courtney could open that link, this was the 6th grade version kind of laid out. Do you mind? So we started with a brainstorm as a class, and we see if we can break it into categories, and then we broke it into our market analysis. And then the next page kind of starts in on the 6th grade standards. So this is where they showed adding and subtracting with decimals. The next page shows multiplication with decimals, and looking at it with a business lens, like looking at their best and worst case scenario. And then the last page got into the division with decimals, where they had to do some unit pricing with their products. And then the next slide, thank you, is really where we started with our market analysis. So they brainstormed their ideas, and then they put it out to the school and community members and got feedback on what people were interested in buying. So they came up with what they thought people would want, and then they surveyed it, and they kind of adjusted their projects from there. We invited experts into the building, and we took field trips to meet with experts to teach students how to make the best product that they were interested in. So like there was some woodworking components, and I had no idea how to help them. So we found the people who did within the community. They had to advertise, and so they came up with a flyer. And I won't show you the whole video, but this was the video that we put out to the community, extending our invitation to come in and see what we had. And this video was created by students. showcasing some of the products that they made. I think that's okay.
It's only a minute.
They packaged and created their own logos. Some crocheting. Yeah. Beth got to eat plenty of gummies.
Those were catnip. My mother's cat loved it.
That's the freeze-dried candy. Thanks. So we shared this with the entire school, and then we invited parents in, we invited community members in. The kids all set up in the cafeteria and sold their products. We ended with a reflection. It was something that they definitely wanted. They're like looking forward to doing again and again. So we looked at what we did really well. We looked at things that we might want to do differently for the future. And then the next slide, lastly, we raised $1,400. Half of that we donated to a community member to offset some medical expenses. And then the other half went to the Andre Levere Scholarship Fund, which was for people entering into fields of public service. So it was a pretty well-rounded project.
It's incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Beth has talked a lot about the Market Day project and seen some pictures before. It's great to see all of it together. They're doing it again this year.
Yeah, they're pretty excited about it.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for
Preston's going out to sell food at the ball game, so for the help the eighth graders go to Washington DC.
You have a basketball game tonight?
Yeah, it's senior night, so I'm gonna go out at 6:45, and then if we're not done, I'm gonna go out for a special presentation.
Okay. Okay. All right, the financial budget report.
Your business manager could not be here. He feels good about where you landed with what you warned. And I'll talk a little bit about budget
Sure.
stuff under mine. That's okay.
Okay. Okay, superintendent's report. Lynn?
Okay, I have, Robin is here, and I've asked Robin to join us. On my agenda, I put in, I know there's some questions within the community, it seems, about our FNESU alternative programs, and we talk about our special programs a lot, but that's usually at the FNESU meetings. We don't really talk about them as much in the district meetings. So when Morton and I met to plan for this meeting, we thought it would be a good idea to help people to understand what we're doing in our alternative programs. So Robin's going to share. She'll be available for questions that people have, and I can also we can add in some things. But I'd like to turn it over to Robin now.
So I believe Michelle prepared a presentation that Courtney was going to share.
She's pulling it up.
It's about 7 minutes.
Senior at MVU, and tonight his team is playing Enosburg. So I'll be at MVU watching the basketball game. Good evening, members of the school board. I'm sorry that I cannot be in person tonight. My son is a senior at MVU, and tonight his team is playing Enosburg. So I'll be at MVU watching the basketball game. I wanted to take the time to share with you some information about our programs in FNESU, specifically alternative programs. Our alternative support programs represent a transformative approach to educating students with behavioral challenges, as well as students with autism and developmental delays across our supervisory union. These programs are called STEPS and RISE, respectively, and are pretty unique. The programs are housed in Enosburg, which is the central location for FNESU. The programs are for all of our students within FASU, regardless of what town the student lives in. I want to share some highlights about our program. First, the program called RISE, which stands for Reaching Independence Through Structured Environments. This is a program, it's actually a space for students with autism, developmental delays, or intensive academic needs in grades K to 5, we call that Little Rise, and then grades 6 through 12 that we call Big Rise. The purpose is for students to acquire academic functional skills, functional communication, and social skills in an environment that is conducive to their special needs. And then we also have a program that's called STEPS, Students Therapeutic Educational Placement Program. This program provides a smaller therapeutic trauma-informed classroom environment housed within the local school community. It's built on safety, connection, and trust. This program was designed to create personal, academic, and social-emotional learning opportunities to meet students where they're at and work on their own individual goals. I want to share some of the highlights of our programs, specifically the significance. Students with emotional challenges or developmental disabilities face unique challenges that require specialized intensive support. Our programs address critical educational needs by providing individualized interventions that bridge learning gaps, support students who might otherwise struggle in traditional classroom settings. It offers a comprehensive research-based approach to developmental education and provides learning opportunities to boost social emotional skills and the ability to practice them in a therapeutic setting. Some of the components are, we have dedicated staff that we offer specialized training to them. There are people that have the title called behavior technicians, and they are trained in evidence-based intervention strategies. We also house the programs with a board-certified behavior analyst, or BCBA, that is providing expert behavioral assessment and planning. And then there are special educators with expertise in students with intensive needs. And I just also want to highlight that there are a lack of resources for students with challenges like these that I'm describing, which is why we decided to create our own programs, because often children would be left on wait lists to get into programs for long periods of time and wouldn't have any educational opportunities. Some of the more of the program components is that our centralized approach offers tailored educational strategies addressing individual student needs. We offer consistent intervention to our neediest students in all the towns of FNESU. It is a cost-effective resource allocation, and we're constantly offering professional development for staff working with this diverse learning population. So there are educational and social impacts of offering these programs. The academic progress is that we can get very detailed about targeted interventions to improve learning outcomes. Each student has an individualized educational plan that addresses specific developmental challenges. We are tracking and measuring student growth through specialized programming, but it also offers social integration. So most students have partial classroom mainstreaming, which promotes social skill development. There are opportunities for peer interactions and community building. We're very mindful of the classroom integration. Students within these programs are fully supported in the classroom setting with a behavior technician, and we have a unique ability to focus on a really slow transition when a student has gained the skills necessary to go back to their sending school. There are also benefits for the community. We're able to prepare students for increased independence. Students' families, we're able to support them by providing comprehensive educational support. We demonstrate our community's commitment to inclusive education. And I would say that the most exciting part is that the students that would have been referred to an alternative school outside of FNESU get to remain in their community. So we did a cost comparison of students that we typically would have sent to Soar Learning Center or a Laraway or a Belkate, for example. And you can see here that tuition for Soar Learning Center is close to $84,000 when we include tuition, transportation, and summer. Laraway was close to $100,000, depending on transportation costs, and Belkate is at close to $130,000 per student. If you're in an FNESU alternative program, it costs around $56,000 per student for STEPS, and it costs around $36,000 per student for RISE. So these programs are more than an educational initiative. It's an investment in our most vulnerable students, their futures, and our community's collective potential. Thank you for listening. Robin Gagne, which is one of the assistant directors who is at STEPS often, is available to answer any of your questions in my absence. You can always email me if you have any specific questions, or I'm happy to join the next meeting when there's not a basketball game. Thank you.
So I think there are a couple of important distinctions that I want to point out. Like we did the math before we did this. It wasn't just that it was going to be more affordable to do it in our community. When we first made the decision to build these internal programs, it also had to do with the capacity of the systems around us. So during COVID, those alternative placements, either several of them shut down or they had only limited access. So we were on wait lists for some kids. We would get them on a wait list, and sometimes we would hear it's going to be 2 years before we could take them, or we could take them if you provide, it would have to be a 2 paraeducator to 1 student ratio, or we were hearing often that child's needs are too much. We aren't going to be able to take them in this program. So we've been able to build these programs, and we currently don't have any students that are out of district. All of our students are able to get their needs met within our district, and that's really important for 2 things. 1, we're doing it in a more cost-effective way. 2, we are seeing that students that historically used to go out of district had a really hard time returning back to public school because there was no easy way to have a gradual transition back. It was just, they met their goal in the alternative program. If students got to that, it usually took quite a long time, and then they would come back without any supports and not in a phased way. So that's one of the reasons that we're seeing success, because we have schools right nearby where we're able to take that time for those kids. And Michelle talked about classroom integration. They might be practicing one skill in their program, and they get to go with their behavior technician over to the elementary school for a short period of time and practice that skill with their support from their BT, and then go back to the alternative program, and then additional opportunities come to practice. And as Michelle said, it's good for not only the students but for our community, because we have a better chance of having success with those students with our internal programs. But Robin, what did you want to add to that?
The only thing that I would add is we also utilize Enosburg Middle High School for very similar to what you just described, really allowing students to work on individual skills and generalize those with their same-aged peers. One other component, I think Adria Parent, the special educator with the RISE program for the older students, has really worked to build a lot of community connections. We have students that spend some time at the Flying Disc working, Ace Hardware. We have some students that are engaging in some custodial tasks, I think with the hope of maybe seeing them be employable within our school setting in the near future. So we definitely have a lot of really good things going on. I think we're really trying to target specifically at STEPS. We have found greater success in students K to 8. So I think that's where we're really trying to support a bulk of students within that age and grade span.
Does anyone from the board have questions?
think it's pretty much answered.
Okay.
So what happens is like students from Richford may go to this program, and then they're integrated possibly in Enosburg, but a lot of times.
Will they practice those
Yeah.
skills?
And they're accompanied by a,
Yes.
every time.
And that's, I think one of the things that's important for us to kind of wrap our thinking around is all of these students are really all of our students, no
Right.
matter what town they live in. Their success has an impact on all of us because they're going to grow up and they're going to be our neighbors and our community members, and we want them to have the skills to be able to be highly functioning within our communities, and that's what these programs are trying to do. And I hear some stories sometimes, especially some of the stories that we get to hear about students in that RISE program for kids with developmental disabilities or delays. It's just, it'll give you chills to just hear about, the tremendous growth, when you have kids that are working on things like verbal communication or, being able to talk with someone or to have some sort of functional skill that they can then master on their own. We're meeting them right where their need is, and we're seeing and hearing stories of tremendous growth as a result of the shift in how we're supporting them.
Yeah, Lynn, I think the only other thing I would add is there are certainly students that are attending the RISE program, K-5, K-6 at Enosburg Elementary, and I do know that there are some students that are generalizing skills into some of those classroom settings. Same is true with students in the older RISE program. They sometimes attend some of the electives that are offered at the middle high school setting. And then for STEP specifically, there are times where it's really important for our students to maybe have a small dose, meaning 20 to 30 minutes of opportunity with a larger group setting, right? Because our program has a limited number of students. We do not have the ability to mimic what it often looks like at the public school setting with the number of students. So being able to utilize Enosburg Elementary, Middle, or High School allows the kids to access so that we can see how they're able to maintain and generalize those skills before we, bring them back to Berkshire or Bakersfield or Richford, which is a little bit of a greater distance. So for us, a lot of it is the proximity of not having to maybe spend, 35 minutes each way on the road and really giving kids classroom time for that. And then at STEPS, we are often transitioning students back to their sending schools. This year, I believe we've had 3 students that have successfully transitioned back. So, that's a big celebration. I think it's been really collaborative efforts working with a variety of staff at the schools to make this happen. So I do want to, take this opportunity to thank the administrators and school staff at those schools that allow us to do that, just given the proximity, which is really helpful for our students.
And I should just note, Robin spends a lot of time at STEPS, and Robin and I have talked about this before. Sometimes the duties and responsibilities that we start out having in these roles, as things change, they get modified over time. And Robin didn't start out working almost daily or pretty much daily at STEPS, but she's there now, and she's doing an incredible job as the assistant special ed director. She takes care of an enormous amount of this responsibility, and definitely appreciate Robin and all the staff that are working in these programs. And I'll just add that I'm very proud of both of these programs, and I had the opportunity to present this to my superintendent colleagues last winter, and then Michelle and Robin and some of their team members presented to superintendents, special ed directors, curriculum directors from all over the state at a spring conference, and we have hosted visits from people from all over the state this year. They're calling up on a regular basis and saying, can we come visit your program and ask you how you did what you're doing? So we're seeing other models in the state that are creeping up that are mirroring some of the things we've done with this program. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Our feelings won't be hurt if
you.
you don't stay on.
Have a great night.
You too. Okay, I will start off on personnel. So we have on our personnel section, one hiring, that's Julie Wright. At your last meeting, I told you about a mid-year resignation for our high school science, and Julie Wright is taking that role at Enosburg High School, so I'd ask the board to make a motion to approve hiring Julie Wright for Enosburg High School science teacher.
Okay, have a motion.
Make the motion.
Sarah made a motion. Rachel?
Aye.
Devin? Josh?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Next up, we have some resignations. We have, start with Matt Webb, who has been serving as our high school principal for the last 3 years. And Matt has decided to go in a different direction. I want to thank you, Matt, for the work that you've done at Enosburg High School. You've definitely had an impact there, and we will miss you. We also have Kayla DaCosta, kindergarten teacher at Richford Elementary School, and longtime middle school teacher at Richford Junior Senior High School, Kyle Kramer, is also resigning. All of these will be effective at the end of this school year. So I'd ask the board to approve those resignations.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve those?
I'll make the motion.
Sarah made the motion. Devin?
Didn't want to.
Rachel?
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
We have several open positions, and I always like to note these in case we have people that watch our meetings. We have nothing open at Cold Hollow. Right now at Enosburg Elementary School, do we still have the long-term elementary subject?
Yes.
Okay. So we're looking for an elementary substitute teacher for, is it the remainder of the year?
Yeah, from May on.
May on, okay. We're also looking for a music teacher for our elementary school for Elise Martin, who is just retired, or is retiring. A middle school track and field coach at Enosburg. At Enosburg High School, they're looking for a JV softball coach, a high school principal, a paraeducator. At Richford Elementary School, they're looking for a school counselor, an elementary classroom teacher. At Richford Junior Senior High School, they're looking for a long-term school nurse substitute, and a middle school ELA teacher. Next up is an action item. And there is a side letter that I linked in, was it linked in the packet? I think it was.
Yes.
Okay. So the side letter is related to one of the teachers at Cold Hollow, Morgan Flanagan. And there was a mix-up about, it really was about course approvals. There's a timeline that didn't get met, so there were some courses that had to be paid for out of pocket that we actually paid and he is paying back. So we made this agreement with the Cold Hollow NEA, the Education Association, and I would ask that this board make a motion to approve the side letter and authorize Mort to sign it.
I make a motion.
Deb made the motion. Rachel?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
Thank you.
You have another one?
Then what?
You have another.
Yeah, I just had to get back to back. I can't read, that's too far away. And we have a teacher, an unpaid leave request, Liz Erickson, who is a Richford Junior Senior High School humanities teacher. She serves in the Navy Reserves, so each year she has a duty, a training duty that she has to do. So she is asking permission to take 11 unpaid days, March 7th, 10th through the 14th, and the 17th through the 21st, in order to fulfill her annual reserve training duty. So I'm looking for the board to make that motion.
I will make that motion.
Deb made the motion. Josh?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
I actually want you to know, this is the last year she's requesting because she's retiring.
Oh.
Yeah.
I just want to go on the record. I know this is a lot for Liz just to do this every year, and I appreciate her service to do both teaching and service to our country.
She's retired from the service, not
Yes.
the school.
Yeah, no, not from the school. Oh, sorry. Thanks for clarifying. Because she's been in the reserves, but she's getting out. This is her last year.
So we do have something under student, but we're going to push that to the very end of the meeting. And I will say, Courtney does a great job every month, and this has become my new favorite game at board meetings, right? We have to entertain ourselves in some way. The principals never know what's going to show up in my board report. They don't know where Courtney's gotten these photos from. So this is a test to the administrators to see left to right, can you describe what are in these pictures? And Courtney loves when you can't so that she can jump in. And
It's also a vision test.
yes,
It is a fun
I
game.
know,
It's fun
It's
game.
true, and it's okay. She'll jump in, but I think Nate's on virtually. Nate, do you want to talk about yours? Let's come back to Nate. We'll go up to the top. There's a funky blue picture at the very top. Anybody know what that is?
Pretty sure that's us,
Okay.
and that was glow math in the library during math week a few weeks ago. Yep, it was pretty cool.
Was that on their tables?
Yep, everything glowed. This was on math week.
Let's go to the middle.
That's the night Kyrielle Dussault scored her 1,000th point. You were here, sir. And tonight's senior night, so in a few minutes I'm going to go out while they're recognized. But those are our 3 seniors that are being recognized tonight. And Courtney did not know that it was senior night when she chose that picture.
True statement.
Well, that is perfect.
I know. I know.
Okay, let's go to the middle, the yellow background.
I know that's Enosburg Middle High School,
You
but,
need binoculars.
Yes.
Courtney, what is it?
Okay, so I took that from a recent newsletter, and I believe that was from 8th grade winter fair. And that is a bunch of your
Welcoming,
students welcoming
yes.
the 8th graders.
All the tour guides when
Yeah.
Students in the high school who went to those elementary, middle schools show them around the building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Last but not least.
I believe, as well as I can see, is that our invention convention?
Yeah, I took that from last night's slideshow.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so our students have been using the makerspace and correlating from their reading, and then they come up with ideas, and they make these creative things that relate to what they're doing in reading.
Thank you for entertaining us and playing along with the photo thing. I hope others find it.
It's quite the principal. It's like a game show.
Yes.
I'm
buzzers. Yes.
Who can buzz in first to say what their picture
I mean,
is?
if you
right?
want hints, I go on your Facebook pages and I look from after the last month's board meeting to this month, so it can be any.
Oh, so good.
Yes.
Okay, you gave away your secret. Now we're all going to study up.
I know, that's gonna be the fun part.
All right, thanks everybody. We already did the alternative program piece. I will just, I'm going to talk briefly about this. We're going to talk a little bit about Governor Scott's education transformation proposal. And at this point, that's what it is. There's no bill that's attached to this proposal yet. There are several elements within his plan that he's proposing. In all of your notes, you have all the links to what I'm talking about. Let me talk about the funding formula first. So the way we fund education right now is that every community in Vermont gets to decide, the boards get to decide, the communities get to vote on how much they're going to spend to educate their students. And those communities, what they're going to spend per pupil varies wildly, from $8,000 to about $18,000 in the state of Vermont. And as you all know at this point, we are way at the bottom of that, right around the 10,000 and some change. So what the governor's proposal would do is it would create a foundation formula, so you get a base education amount. So it would take it from, let me back up. Each community currently approves their budget, and then the state takes all of the approved budgets, and then they have to generate that amount of money out of the taxes. So it's kind of our system is different than others. It isn't the state telling us what to spend. It's each community independently deciding what to spend. And then that's the collective amount that has to be raised in the education fund. And that's how it impacts your taxes, is based on what everybody spends, okay? So what the proposal would do is it would shift it away from being a funding system that requires voter approval. We wouldn't be presenting a budget to the community. We would have a determined budget amount based on a foundation formula of $13,200 per weighted pupil. So the weights, we have a weighted system now, and we've talked about that before. The weights are slightly different under the governor's proposal. Primarily, the weights, there are broad categories for weights: poverty and special ed, CTE weights, emerging multilingual learners, and there's some other small weights that are factored in there as well. He then would apply those weights. You'd get the base amount, plus they would multiply out and factor in how many students meet those weighted categories, and that would be your overall funding for your schools, and then you need to make it work with that. In addition to that, there would be categorical aid from the state. There currently is categorical aid that we already get, and primarily around transportation is something that we currently get categorical aid for by way of example. So the funding amount, or the funding formula under his plan, would completely be transformed. I will say that the other pieces are that he is looking at the governance structure amongst the state. So right now we have a system that has 52 school districts in the state of Vermont. So I should have had you pull up last night's, Courtney.
I can find it.
Could you go to it quickly and go to slide 49? So
Let me just find it.
currently we have 52 either supervisory unions or supervisory districts in the state of Vermont, and each of those SUs or SDs has their own school board. So under the governor's plan, he's proposing shifting that to a model that would have 5 districts instead of 52. So you would have every, what they use to determine that is the Vermont Superintendents Association regional map. And there isn't really any evidence base in that at all, other than if you look over on the right, this is what I'm talking about, and look at the dark green section. That dark green section currently represents the Champlain Valley Superintendents Association. So the Vermont Superintendents Association has divided the state up into 5 regional superintendent groups. The only thing that currently means, that Franklin County, Grand Isle, all of Chittenden, and 2/3 of Addison, it just defines where I go to my monthly regional superintendent group meeting, and it just means that that region gets one trustee for the Vermont Superintendents Association kind of executive board, their trustees group. So it doesn't have any other construct other than where I go to my meetings, really. So the plan was developed around that, and what would happen with us is we would be associated with the Champlain Valley region. So all of those existing school districts would be merged into one, and that would be about 35,000 students. There'd be 4 other districts, and they would range between 10 and I think 15 each on that map.
So we would be 3 times as big,
Right.
as the rest of them.
So it's pretty different than the governance structure right now. He's talking about drivers in his plan are centered around, he's talking about efficiency, and he's also talking about quality. And so what we're hearing, although this plan, details related to this plan are slow to be released, so it's hard to respond to what his plan is, because it's really a proposal that is about, I think, 18 pages long at this point, and there's some testimony that we're all trying to listen to and track to get other details, but it hasn't been fully released yet. So That's the governance change that's contemplated in there. So there's the funding change, there's the governance change. And then underneath that, there's language that talks about the school portfolio. And they talk about looking at setting parameters for how they would determine whether or not a school was providing an adequate education and whether they were doing it in a cost-effective way. And that would determine, it sounds like that plan also is contemplating school consolidations as well. So merging some schools together. It's not expressly saying that they're going to do it under the plan, but it's creating the conditions to potentially force those things to happen in terms of how they're keeping communities, their accountability measures for communities. So the timeline for this plan is, I'm having a hard time finding the right adjective. It's vast. It's I'll just say fast. 2 years, really. So when you get through this year, it would be 2 more years to operate under this current Franklin Northeast Supervisory Union with these 2 school boards, and the plan proposes that those large districts would be ready to operate on July 1 of 2027. So it's a pretty rapid turnover. So within his transformation plan proposal, what he's describing next year as is the opportunity to stabilize our current system and support early transition planning. I've been trying to decode that, and I think what that means is there's going to be more information released around minimum class size, minimum school size, minimum district size, and I think that the school piece, they're probably going to try to incentivize some people to voluntarily start trying to move towards consolidation of schools. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's what I'm piecing together. The governor has promised in his budget that he will use $77 million of excess money from the state to buy down property taxes for this next school year. So he'll use that one-time money to try to hold property taxes flat. There's a move in this plan. Currently, we have the governor who appoints the Secretary of Education, which is Zoe Saunders, and he also appoints members of our State Board of Education. And right now, our State Board of Education has a lot of rulemaking responsibilities. One of the things in this proposal is a shift from rulemaking responsibility being at the State Board to being under the Secretary's circle of control. So it is that piece of it. It seems a little problematic to me that we lose a little checks and balance when you put too much power into just one role, and it leaves you wide open for political swings, because all of these are potentially controlled by whoever sits in the governor's seat. For the following year, 2026-27, that we'd start transitioning towards that new funding formula. I'm not clear on this part yet what that means. It sounds like it wouldn't be fully foundation formula based, but there'd be some move towards that. They would elect the new board members in November of 2026. Those would not be, all of you are, I know you're technically paid, but I'll just say publicly these people volunteer their time, because you are not paid enough to account for much in terms of how much you put into being on our boards. But under this new governance structure, these board members would be quasi-professional positions. They've not defined what that means, but it sounds like it would be a more professional compensation, part-time, is what I think I'm hearing. Those people would go right to work in November, and they would need to build a budget that would include, I don't even know how many schools are in the Champlain Valley region, but 17 districts. So they'd be building a budget for the first year for the new school district. At the end of the 26-27 school year, we would, Franklin Northeast, and all the existing supervisory unions and districts would be closing out all district business and closing accounts, things like that. By July 1, 2027, under the governor's plan, the new district would take over operating all of the district schools. That would be the first year that they receive the weighted base amount in categorical aid in that foundation formula. And then they would begin community engagement. They talk about community engagement through the lens of receiving input from school advisory committees, or councils, and the school advisory council, I'm not clear if those are elected or if those are appointed or those are volunteer. That part is no detail around that yet that I have seen. They would be asked to give some feedback to the new district board, is what I understand, about what their priorities would be for the school, the things that they would like for their community. And they would be asked to approve. Each of these principals has to write a continuous improvement plan each year, and it would be that school advisory council that would approve that plan. In 28-29, so 4 years out, school consolidations would occur to achieve quality and financial indicators that would be set under rulemaking. The districts would use the AOE rules to evaluate the existing operation patterns to make some of those determinations about how many schools were operating and which kids are going to which schools. And then throughout this process, what is outlined in the plan is that the AOE would be providing technical assistance to the communities. So there's a lot going on, and feels a little, sometimes we talk about drinking from the fire hose because there's a lot coming at you, a little more than you can swallow at once, and this feels like an adequate representation right now. We're trying to keep up, but there's no document that shows us all of it, so we're trying to get nuggets out of this committee meeting or that committee meeting to see what's the agency dropped here or dropped there to get more information. So that part feels a little frustrating to me because it's been described accurately in the press, this is a bold plan. I will say, personally, I think it's really important for all of us to remember that over 30 budgets were voted down last year in our state, and our taxpayers chose to send a really strong message to Montpelier. And I think that message has been received. And I think that something much bigger than what we maybe anticipated is going to happen as a result of that messaging and trying to address the affordability piece of our education system. I do just want to say also, I acknowledge that we do have an affordability piece. I know we have a lot of districts and supervisory unions in our state. We have over 100, I think it's 120 districts, 52 SEs or SEUs. So there does need, some of those are really small. They have under 500 kids in some of those districts. So there definitely does need to be some consolidation at the governance level. I also feel strongly that there needs to be a shift in how we fund public education, and I think we are the poster child for why this is not okay. Like our kids do not get the same educational opportunities as students in other parts of the state, and we're all trying to meet the same educational outcomes, and it's really hard to meet the same educational outcomes when some communities, we're serving population of students that come to us with some significant need and challenge, high poverty area, less resources and fewer opportunities. That's an equation that doesn't really lead to you finding an easy path to getting better educational outcomes. We're still working on it, and we're doing great work. So the other piece, I'll just say the final piece, is that we do operate a lot of schools in Vermont. We have 250-ish. How many?
I think it's 287.
In Vermont, and that's, yeah, you're right, it's 287 schools. And some of those schools have under 100 students, some have under 50, some have under 25, some have under 10. So we have like governance structures and like there's a lot of feeling attached to this plan at the state level, and no matter what decision gets made, it's going to be emotional somewhere. And I think people can look at this logically and say, yeah, we have to do something about education in Vermont, but people are going to have a hard time saying, and it has to be our community, right? People are going to want to look at other communities. So my message to you is something is going to happen. The legislature is also on board that we need transformation. I don't think it's going to end up being 5 districts. I think that's too big. I do think that there'll be something in between where we are now and in the governor's proposal of 5. I hope that if they're really trying to look at transformation, that they look at all of the pieces together, because if they only choose to take one part of this, we're just kind of moving the deck chairs on the Titanic. We're not solving the problem if we only address the funding and we don't look at the governance and we don't look at the schools, we don't look at all of those pieces together and the rulemaking. There's another piece of this that is really concerning to me, and that is choice. And I think that people underestimate what that means. I think there are people that are listening to a narrative about parents should be able to choose, and I hear that. I hear what they're saying. There's a caution that I would provide as people are contemplating whether or not broad school choice is the right direction. We have to be careful because we're trying to create a system that is more affordable. And if we open the door for more independent schools and more religious schools to be able to have students tuition out to, that increases the number of students that we're sending outside of our public education system, which will also compress the amount of funding that we have within the public education system. And those public dollars would be going to independent schools that do not have the same accountability measures, and they don't have the same restrictions as we do. They don't have the same non-discrimination rules that we have to follow. So there's a trap in this that I just hope as a state we're very careful about. There's a lot of research about what has happened in states that have opened the door for broad school choice and vouchers. So it's a scary time, and I'm following this carefully, and I'll try to keep you updated. Do people have questions, comments?
So you think next year we're pretty much the same, and then the following year is when we'll start to see some bigger shifts?
So I can't answer that because there's nothing changes without the legislature approving it, and the legislature doesn't have a bill to go with this plan yet. And I heard today we might be a couple weeks away from there even being a bill. So it's hard to say. If everything went through the legislature, the bill, came in and it represents everything that he's released, and the legislature said, yes, that's great, that's the plan, then yeah, it would be 2 years. We would start to see different things happen in each of those years. But I don't think that's going to happen. There's a lot for people to try to say, we understand this, but maybe not at that scale. And so there's a lot of back and forth that needs to happen before anything will get to the point of making its way through. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's not a done deal, basically.
No, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
Tech centers?
So glad you brought that up. Even though it's hard to describe that because there's less released about that yet. So what we're hearing is that tech centers would be pulled out of the districts, and tech centers as a state would have their own governance structure. Whether that is they're one district on their own and they have like an executive director or tech center superintendent that would run those tech centers, or there's a second proposal that they become a BOCES, which is like it's like an entity that I don't know if I can describe a BOCES. it's an entity that would come together, and we would be giving money to the BOCES to be able to run those tech center districts, or tech centers, not districts, tech centers across the state. So I guess whether it's a BOCES or whether it's a district doesn't really matter. In this plan, it is taking those out of the governance structure, and what they're saying is they're trying to make tech centers more accessible to more students and make it less about competing with local schools for those tuition dollars or for those funding dollars. So it is, I need to learn more about where they're going with the tech center piece. It's just not as clear yet. I don't know, is Nate back on?
Yeah, I'm back on it, but you're right. It's still very, very unclear whether we're going to be pulled out or molded in. So it's still a lot to be determined.
Yeah. I don't think I've heard any circumstance, at least in the governor's proposal, where you'd be molded in to the 5 districts. Have you?
Only that that if we did go 5 districts, I still have heard talk around doing like 12 districts, all centered around tech center regions. But again, who knows where it's going to go and as this plan gets rolled out.
And I think a lot of people think that, the governor's plan 5 is bold. That's a huge shift, and they maybe didn't. That might not be where they think it's going to land. I along with Nate, I've heard county, I've heard tech center district, and there's another bill that's in there now that is proposing 25 districts instead of 52. Again, not a lot of detail. So, given the lack of detail and the point that we're in the legislative session, that scares me a little, because they only have 10 weeks left to figure all this out, and if they don't get it right, there was an unintended consequence in Act 127 that we lived last year with that 5% cap, and we saw what that did to our tax rate when we didn't change anything in our plan, or in our spending plan. So I'm very worried about the timeline, because it's I don't know that I've brought my green law book to any of these meetings, but the green law book is about this thick. In order to do this kind of change, I'm hearing anywhere from 2/3 to 3/4 of the laws in that book would have to be rewritten. So it just touches a lot of things when you start looking at that kind of a consolidation. Is there no other questions? Do you want me to keep going? Okay. So annual meeting preparation. First, I want to thank Courtney, because she has been locked away in her office really around our annual report, which, do we have one with us? I don't know if I have one in my bag.
I might have one, I don't know.
In a minute, but our
It's wonderful.
our work on our annual report it's been a lot of work, and I think we're very proud of how it came out this year. The annual report is going to be mailed.
You can say it, it's okay.
So, I'll just be totally transparent. We have gone back and forth between, are we sending a 2-page mailer that's just an informational piece that doesn't tell you much, but it gives you links, and it costs a lot of money to send something out to homes. And we have another district in the state that figured out how to send their whole packet for about what we spent last year for postage on the 2-pager. So we have, when I say me, I mean Courtney, has done a tremendous amount of work to figure out how to get a nonprofit status to be able to do that. And so we're going to be able to mail that annual report to every household in all 6 towns. What we don't know yet is if it's going to be 12 cents a packet or 22 cents a packet, which is very similar to what we mailed those 2-pagers for last year. So we're pleased about that.
Good job.
Yeah, she's been working hard on it, and the uncertainty about what we're mailing, I know, has been weighing on Courtney, and she's
It's fine.
she's been a trooper. But the annual report can be found online, so people can see it on our website. It was mailed to you as board members. Is it on Facebook?
It's on Facebook. It's at the printing company at the moment, and as soon as I'm getting a bunch of copies sent to me, and then I will deliver them to all town clerks, libraries, every school. There'll be some at central office.
And all of our annual meetings.
And all of our annual meetings, and every mailbox. So I'm hoping, I think by next week we'll get them mailed.
Which is awesome. It's a lot of information.
It's a lot of work.
Thank you.
So we have, we took feedback on our annual report. We were happy last year with where our annual report landed, and it was one of those things you don't know how things are perceived until you release it. And we thought we spent so much time communicating about all the things we were doing, and we asked for feedback in some of our annual meetings, and one of the people in the community said, "You didn't write that for us." And I thought, what does that person mean? And then I went back through and reread our annual report through a different lens, and I thought, oh no, we did use too much jargon, and there were too many words that if you're not in education, it's really hard to understand. So we worked very hard this year to take as much of the jargon out as we could. Like, we're really good in education at using acronyms and jargon, and we really tried to take that out, and we tried to use photos to tell stories and graphics to tell stories as much as the words. So
I do like, though, that every principal wrote their own full report, and even though it's not in the full book, I have a link that will bring you to each school, and I embedded some pictures in each school's report too when I was finished editing them. So there's QR codes all throughout that whole book.
So we definitely get feedback that there is not enough budget information. There are links that bring you to everything that you should want to see. Everything is on our FNESU page, so you should be able to go there under FY26 budget and see all of the budget information. The other thing, and I'll apologize to this board, because as you know from the email I sent you on Sunday, I realized we decided a couple of weeks ago we really should do an informational meeting in each school instead of having it be in each town, so that people could hear from their principals as well, specific to what is happening in their children's school or in their grandchildren's school or in the school in the community that they live. So we added some additional meetings. We had our first one last night at Enosburg Elementary. It went very well. It's very difficult to get people to come to these meetings, and we're feeding everybody this year. We're hoping that we'll get more people to want to come. So Jen and her team got soup and salad and rolls, and we got more people than we got at most of the meetings that we had last year for our budget. Not a big turnaround though on Jen's, because she went first. I realized Sunday, as I was thinking about, we've got something every night this week, I thought, who's going to be there for ER at Jen's meeting? And then I remembered I didn't tell this board, because we didn't have a meeting between the time that we made this decision and starting them. So surprise, we have a lot of meetings in the next 2.5 weeks. So if you could let Courtney know if you're able to go to any of those. Definitely, as I said in the email, not expecting you to be at all of those.
Do you want dates?
What's that?
Do we want dates of each school?
I think you sent it.
Yeah, I did. I sent it.
She sent it.
And it's also it's on the back page of that annual report as well, all of those dates.
And it's on everybody's Facebook page. I've put it out in a lot of different places.
I also want to just acknowledge the principals. Like, I didn't give them a lot of time either, because I wish I had the idea in August, but I didn't. I didn't have the idea until January. So they put things together really quickly. I know probably wasn't in their maybe they weren't in my fan club that day, but they came together and they figured it out, and everybody's approaching it a little bit differently. Last night, Jen had some of her kids there with her, the tech integration is for the Enosburg district, and some of the librarian was there, and they were showing how they had done projects with their, well, why don't you say what it was?
Well, how they're using the makerspace, and I mentioned it, showed some data, and then I mentioned how we have a new reading program. So then I showed how we're using our reading program, but we're also using engagement with some of our tools. And so we showed different things that kids are doing that relates to what they're doing in math or literacy. So it was really kind of fun. I have to say, I agree with you, it was short notice. But after it was done, I keep thinking like, oh, next year this. It was really a lot of fun, and the people that came were really engaged and stayed quite a while asking questions. So I found it really positive, and I look forward to doing it again.
Good. Pump up those other principals that haven't done it yet. It's
Yeah.
going to be so fun.
It actually was fun.
I actually think this is it's people want to hear from their principals in their school, and I'm hoping this will get people to want to come to hear, the details about what's happening there, and then we're kind of like we close the show for the night talking about the budget, and I'm working to condense what I did last night. There were some pages in our slides that I went a little too long. Courtney and I reflected on it. I'm going to make it much more concise for Kelly tomorrow night. I'm going to have a timer going so I can. And
you learned from the first
that's
one.
Right. That's right.
She didn't know I was timing it last night, but I was.
I said, how long was that? And she told me exactly, and I went, oh, that is not how long I thought it was. And I will say, Morgan is away, and so I'm talking about the budget without our business manager, and I'm acknowledging that at the beginning that I know a lot about the budget, but I cannot pull data up the way Morgan can or describe some of the things that he can. So we have members of our central office team who are there to take names and email addresses and questions if we can't answer them. So that's where we are with annual meeting prep. Anybody have any questions or comments? I'm going to move on and ask the board if you will make a motion to grant me with the authority to sign employment contracts. We're hoping those will be ready to go out in that first week of April.
Got a motion?
Make a motion.
Sarah made the motion. Josh?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Rachel was there last night too.
She was.
Forgot she was in the square up there. The next thing I will talk about is the principal search. So we are looking for the next principal of Enosburg Middle High School. We made a shift when Rachel Reynolds left Enosburg Middle School. So for a long period of time, we had a principal of the middle school, we had a principal of the high school, and there was an assistant principal of the high school. The middle school has been around 125 kids, and we made the decision when Rachel left that it isn't big enough to have its own principal. So we shifted at that time to having an assistant principal at the middle school, an assistant principal at the high school, and a principal. So I've thought a lot about, with Matt leaving and with us thinking about where do we need to go with education. This won't be popular, what I'm about to say. It's important for us to think about creating a plan that's sustainable, and what we know is whatever is going to come from the state, they're relying on data that they commission, they meaning the legislature, and the governor is pointing to in his proposal. It's called the PICUS report, and I've talked to all of you about the PICUS report before, and that has a lot of factors in it, but it's really outing what the right size district is, what the right size school is, what the right size class is, and what the right FTE per school is. And when I say that, I mean like for every school, you get one principal per X number of students and one assistant principal per high school. So when I'm thinking about the plan for Enosburg Middle High School, we have Patrick Hartnett, who is currently the Enosburg High School assistant principal. Patrick took this job because we had a need. He's a longtime veteran administrator himself, and he helped us out this year and did a great job with us. But Patrick is ready to retire and is not going to apply for the permanent position. So when I think about the leadership structure, I really think that we need to ready our community for shifts that are coming. It doesn't make sense for us to move into a staffing model that won't be recommended a year from now. So my recommendation to the board is that we currently have Heather Hawkins, who is working as the assistant principal in the middle school, and I would recommend to the board that we look at Enosburg Middle High School as one unit. And even with the model that we've currently had, it has still functioned pretty separately. And I'm going to recommend that we look for a leadership plan that makes it so that that doesn't happen. So I'm recommending that we maintain one assistant principal for the 612 building and hire one principal for the 612 building. And then really work to anything that's separate between those two. We have to think about how we can create efficiencies, because we know we're going to have a different model and different expectations, and what people might not be connecting but is clear to those of us who are doing this work. There are going to be accountability measures that are centered around our ratios and how we're staffing our buildings and how many kids are in classes and in schools. And they're going to be they're already looking at the staffing pieces. So I feel that it would be setting us up, if I were to fill both the principal position and the assistant principal position, it would be setting us up for a year from now having to then reduce a position because we're getting, I don't want to say dinged for, but we're getting, it's going to be held against us if we're way over in the assistant principal ratio. Does that make sense? What questions, comments, or concerns do people have?
It's the model you have, isn't it, Beth?
It works here.
We have it.
I mean, it works really well.
We have a dean of students who's a .3 teacher too. He does driver's ed here. So we have a principal in the .7 dean of students, yes.
I'm actually going to pick on Beth for a minute, if you don't mind. In a good way. One of the things that the agency is really telling us to do is that we need to do a better job of staffing with precision, is what they're calling it. And we had our first training, and I think Beth texted me during that training and said, I could have written this. And she's not wrong.
Like, this is what I did, and you guys picked on me about it.
In a good way. But Beth will say, I've got an out-of-the-box way of thinking about something. And it's really about, like, mathematically calculating, I don't need a full-time person to do this. I mean, you've even come beyond the tenths, you know. I need like a .67 person to do this, and then I'm gonna do .33 of them in this other role. And so she's already been looking at it through the lens of how much of someone do we need, and you're doing it based on your own metrics. The state is asking us to look at it through number of students, right? So we had conversations last year about nursing. This is another example. We have metrics that are set in our education quality standards. And it says one nurse per 300 students, 300 or 500, and I don't have it right in my head right now. But my point is, we often will just say, well, we're just going to say per school. And what they're saying is we have to be more precise in our staffing If you need one, it means you have one per that number of students. And if you need less than that, you share with another school or you hire only a portion of a role. They're talking about that for, we're going to be charged with looking at every staffing decision through that lens. And they're just encouraging us to not fall into the trap of the rounding up piece. And I've talked to you all about the rounding up piece kind of in a roundabout way. So I know there are a lot of conversations about like that, who works at that central office, right? Like there are other positions that work out of my office, instructional coaches by way of example. We did that by design, and we said let's do it at our level, because if we say we're going to do it at the school level, they would have each tried to hire a half-time instructional coach, and they would have found that they couldn't. Nobody was going to take a half-time instructional coach. So there's that temptation around that. Really want someone, so I'm going to hire 1.0 instead. Some schools would have found it, and some schools would not have. So some would have had the support, some schools would not have had the support. By doing it at our level, we can push out precisely, like you have 5 new teachers, and you have 2 new teachers, and you have 3 new teachers. So that's one way to staff with precision. But what Beth's doing is another way to staff with precision. The state is going to be pushing on us to look at it through how many classes do you offer, and how many kids are in those classes, so looking at that, but then also the staffing model. So I just think, I only brought up the nurses by way of example, but we're going to have hard decisions to make over the next several years in order to meet the kind of the constraints that they're going to set for us. So I really think that we need to shift now in order to not create the conditions where we are going to be forced to shift, and then have to do it by letting someone go. It doesn't make sense to build a model that isn't recommended.
Rachel's got a question.
Oh, okay.
Rachel?
So I just want to make sure I understood it correctly when I was following there a little bit. So the idea would be similar to Richford, where it's one principal and then a dean of students, is that correct?
No, it would be one principal, one assistant principal.
For both the middle school and the high school?
Yes, not
Okay.
for each, but to cover 6-12.
Okay. I guess my only thing is like, and Beth kind of answered it after I had raised my hand, of how that works there. Like, does she feel that's, because I know it's similar too, because it's just herself and Fair, right?
Yes.
I'm correct? Okay. And we feel that that model works well?
I think it worked well for us.
Okay.
There's a different scale at Enosburg High School. They have more students than Richford Junior Senior High School, but they're definitely still below the range of number of administrators per students. So I think it's 600 for administrators. Did that answer it, Rachel?
It did, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
I need you to tell me which direction, like if you're supportive of that.
I think that makes more sense, honestly, anyway. So, if you need a motion, I'll make a motion. I don't know what you're looking for.
I just need you to tell me that that's the right direction to go. I don't really feel like we have to have a motion from the board unless the board feels like you would want to codify a motion.
Sir, what do you
What are
think?
your thoughts? You're quiet over there.
It's good to get ahead of it and be surprised.
We don't have to backtrack.
Yeah.
How many students is there, 6 through 12, Enosburg?
430? Or 40?
So Heather is just for the middle school, so she would be the understanding that she would be assistant for 6 through 12 rather than 6 through 8.
It will require different structures
Right.
in the building because they're functioning pretty separately now, but Beth's school definitely functions as a whole, but she has pieces that she will break them, like the middle school staff will work on this piece and high school staff will work on that piece, but she's coordinating and leading all of that. And So we'll be looking for a different structure to make that happen at Enosburg High School.
So Lynn, are you saying that Heather, who right now is doing the middle school, would take over Matt's position realistically, then we would post for the assistant? Or would both positions be posted and she would have to apply?
So I would never recommend that we would transfer someone in without a hiring process.
Okay.
So I don't want to speak for Heather, and I'm certainly not going to put her on the spot. The position's open now. Whether Heather chooses to apply for that or not will be totally up to her, and then we'll go through a hiring process. So I'm trying not to name anybody in this, Rachel. I'm just trying to say, like, this would be the model. There would be one principal and there would be one assistant principal. It doesn't mean that when we look at it that there might not be another position behind that. We're going to have to look at, you know, might there need to be a part-time person that's maybe helping with HHPs or Title IX or something like that. We'll figure that out as we build the model, but in terms of the who, we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
So the next part of this is
I'm sorry, and the other clarification would be that Heather has an assistant principal role, so if she didn't seek the principal job, she would still have a job.
Yes, so that's why we're not posting an assistant principal role right now. So Heather would shift to 612 assistant principal in theory. So hiring is challenging, and I have had the position posted for a couple weeks, I think. Time has taken on a new meeting with me lately, but I am interested in some consulting firms to see if they might help to recruit other candidates for this role. Like the way Courtney and I typically run our search processes, and we've gotten pretty good at it over the past several years. But I think that the piece that's really challenging for us is looking for candidates in different places. And I put feelers out to other superintendents to just say, have you done search processes outside of Vermont or outside of your system? And I've received back four different recommendations for other search processes. So our search firms that could help us, and I think it's a really important position. And I think that I'm going to be honest, there's a lot that I'm trying to hold on to right now in terms of just what is about to happen in the education landscape, and leading a search process right now is another layer of a lot of extra work that I don't know that I have the capacity to fully hold, and I definitely don't know that I have new ideas about how to recruit outside of Vermont potentially to get more people on the table. So I'm asking the board to consider letting me go ahead and hire one of those search firms that would work with more, if that's okay, once I get some proposals. I don't have any proposals at this time, but I really think we should try to cast as wide of a net as we can for this position.
I agree with you. I think we should.
I agree.
So are you good with moving forward with making the decision to approve within a certain amount, or we have money that we could use to put towards this? It sounds like a typical, it might be like a 10% kind of fee is what I'm hearing. So potentially whatever the administrator's salary would be, that the search would cost about that much, potentially. So, but I don't have any numbers yet. So can you grant more the authority to approve a search?
You need a motion on that, right?
Yeah.
A motion on that?
Make the motion.
Sarah made the motion. Rachel?
Aye.
Kevin? Josh?
Aye.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Except student, we'll come back to student.
Kelly?
Everything is informational, but we'll just add that tomorrow night we do have our budget and school presentation, and we have a video that the kids put together that is pretty great. So, that's it.
I saw it, it's very good.
Beth?
All informational, I'll just add that at halftime, Frank Markel's here from the soccer officials, because our championship girls team were named won the sportsmanship award,
nice.
Which hasn't happened in a long time. We won that in conjunction, and I guess they all vote on the team who they think deserves it, and so Richford and St. Johnsbury tied. And so they'll be receiving an award at halftime.
The
So
officials vote, Beth? The
The
officials
officials vote, and they
That's cool.
choose teams, girls' team and the boys' team. And so I think we'll be done by then, but I'm gonna go down to that. I'm gonna leave again.
Thank you. Jen?
All informational, and just, I'd love to share my presentation from the other night with you so you can see some of the growth that we had with our data. It was pretty exciting.
Matt?
Mine's all informational, and we'll be over there next month in Enosburg, and I think, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Heather, and she popped off, but I think what we're going to share is new approach, not new district-wide, but new in the school, to be looking at using data, particularly with our middle school groups, that I suspect with new structure will move into the high school as well next year.
Nate?
The only thing I have is February 20th is our state of the school and budget discussion, so if you're in town, stop by Cold Hall on the 20th.
And for board business, I read about we'll be going to the Sugar House next month, the whole plan trip there. Is that still good, Nate?
Yep, I'll send information out. If the weather looks bad, maybe we'll carpool up, but if it looks like we can all get up there, I'm thinking about how we're gonna transport everybody up there. That's a good
So
point.
I just want to say a little more about that. The board, we invested in new Sugar House for the Cold Hollow construction program. We lost the lease on our existing Sugar House that we had for years and years and years. So it is nearing completion, and it will be operating in March, most likely. So what we talked about was meeting up at 5:15 at the high school for any administrators or board members that wanted to go up and see what that Sugar House looks like. Both Josh will be there and Nate will be there to give us a tour of the Sugar House. I thought people would enjoy that. So we'll go do that in March.
And then, but the meeting is where?
Enosburg. It's at Enosburg High School.
Okay, so that's at 6 o'clock at the high school. Okay.
Yeah. We're just doing this in advance of it.
Okay,
and
I
we
got
can
it.
get up and back in that 45 minutes.
You'll probably have to let me know, board members, if you are all going to go to the Sugar House, because I'll have to warn the meeting for earlier if we have a quorum.
Oh, if there's-
Yeah, I think you can warn it
No matter.
for 5:15 as, just warn it for 5:15.
Okay.
And then work can open it and say we're jumping in vans and going on a tour.
Sounds good.
Okay? Just in case if
Yeah.
somebody shows up last minute. Yeah.
Okay, and any other board business? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to.
You're not gonna adjourn yet, unless you want to adjourn and then go back in for, we're only warned for the one, so you should stay. Should stay open, but I'm gonna request that, can we move to your conference room?
Yeah.
I'm gonna request that we pause, go across the hall to the conference room, and we'll adjourn there. We don't need a camera for the last part.
You want to go into executive now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive for student.
I'll make the motion.
Sarah made the motion, Rachel?
Bye.
Right? Well, I'm going to the board. I'm going to the basketball.
Yeah.